Hello, everyone. This is Ben Dunn, founder of Van Press, comic book publishing company established in 1985. Creator of such comics as Warrior Nun, Mighty Tiny, Ninja High School, Marvel Mangaverse, etc., etc. So, today I'm going to talk about style. What do I mean by style? Well, if I mention the name Jack Kirby, Frank Frazetta, Steve Ditko, Frank Miller, Charles Schultz, a host of other comic book artists, you immediately recognize their style. You know what kind of things they draw, what they're known for, and you can see it directly and tell, oh, yes, that's a Jack Kirby. Oh, yes, that's a Steve Ditko. There's certain little nuanced things that an artist, it puts in his creations, his art, that is instantly recognizable. Our little trademark, as they say, our little, our little stamp on our creation. Because, every artist is different. We, or at least we're supposed to be. The thing about it is that in the realm of comic books are a commercial venture. I don't know if you realize this or not. But we make comic books. Comics are being made because we want to make money. Our hope is that the comics we create will not only ignite your imagination, but will entertain you. Will take you into exotic adventures, distant lands, with interesting characters, in hope that you'll part with your hard-earned money so that you'll continue those adventures. Continue reading what we produce. If we produce things that are not entertaining, and this is really what it comes down to, this is base core, then people get bored or they feel like they're not getting their money's worth. And that is the death knell of a comic book, is when people become apathetic toward it, are bored by it, or don't care about it, or don't feel like they're getting their value. Now, honestly, I think a lot has to do with style. I look at modern comics, and honestly, I could just because I'm a boomer. Maybe boomers have a different perception of things. But I remember when I grew up with comics, I could instantly recognize, oh, that's a Marvel comic. Oh, that's a DC comic. Oh, that's a Charlton comic. Oh, that's a Harvey comic. Because every comic book company back in the days, 60s, 70s, they had what was called a house style. The comics they were producing were trying to be sort of consistent, trying to be a little bit recognizable, so that when you went to the comic book stands, you immediately knew that was a Marvel, that was a DC, that was a Charlton, that was a Harvey, that was an Atlas, whatever, and then you'd want to pick it up. Now I can't tell one from the other. Honestly, I look at a Marvel, I look at a DC, I look at any number of comic books out there, and they all look the same. They look very generic. Now, is Anarch Press guilty of that? Sure. But we're a creator-run company, so that we can't control what a creator will put on his comic book. He decides that's what he wants to do, then we're very, very much allows that creator to do whatever he wants. So where are the artists with that certain je ne sais quoi, as they say, that certain style that is instantly recognizable? Well, there are a few out there. I won't, off the top of my head, I can think of only a few. Peach Momoko's one. I can recognize her style because she decides she wants to do drawings and it's easily instantly recognize. Frank Cho, another one I can instantly recognize. And I'm talking about, but he's from the old school. I'm talking about in the last 5, 6, 10 years. There's and there are very few comic artists that I instantly recognize. Well, granted, maybe I just haven't been picking up enough comics because people seem to know a particular artist style. These days, maybe I'm just an old boomer who longed for the days of simplicity. Where a particular artist, made his mark by creating a certain way of drawing things. I mean, I could recognize a Gil Kane. I could recognize a Carmine Infantino. I could recognize an Alex Toth. I could instantly recognize a particular artist, and I knew which artists I liked and which artists I didn't care much for. Nowadays, I can't tell. Honestly, I can't tell. Again, maybe it's the boomer in me. Maybe I'm just, oh, Ben, you're just not with it, man. This is the way comics are. And I said, okay, fine. Be it as it may. But I just think that there seems to lack a certain style in comics these days. Where you can look at a comic and says, oh my gosh, that's different. That's new. I like this way. I like the way this artist draws this particular way. And this is what I like. And this is interesting. It's very interesting. Yeah. And it's one thing also for a comic book artist to copy another comic book artist, and then branch off to later create his own style. I mean, a lot of Marvel artists back in the 60s and 70s were told to draw in a specific way. Oh, draw like Jack Kirby, and then later on, they find their own style as things went along. When Frank Miller first came along, I bought the Daredevil 158. It was heavily inked by Klaus Janson. Klaus Janson. Maybe it wasn't. Well, maybe it was. I don't know. I forget. But at the time, he had just come off of Gil Kane had just come off, and he looked like sort of a Gil Kane knockoff a little bit. Frank Miller, yes, true. But as time went on, Frank Miller evolved into his own style. He began to become Frank Miller, and that's where that's where there seems to be something lacking in comic books, especially modern comics, especially corporate comics. Like Marvel and DC, where there seems to be a lack of style. And I think comics are lesser for it because it used to be, and I say this tongue in cheek, that the cover usually matched the interior. The interior artists were allowed to draw covers. So when you bought a comic book, you knew what you were getting. Now, if you look at a comic book, they spend a lot of money on the cover artist, and it seems like they spend very little on the interior artist. It seems like interior art is an afterthought nowadays in modern comics. There seems to be no consistency in the art team. There seems to be no look. I mean, I could tell an X-Men from a Daredevil, from a Spider-Man, from a Fantastic Four, because every single one of those books was drawn a different way by a different art team. And that way they stood out. They made their mark. Now I can't tell from one from the other. It just, I don't know what it is. I don't know, when did it become so generic? And when did it become so, and I think if, and this is just me, maybe it's wishful thinking, I think if Marvel and DC went back to the basics, and had a real creative team, one that could create an identity for each comic that they did, then maybe the sales would start to pick up. When George Perez and John Byrne was looking at X-Men, okay, he created the look and feel of the X-Men for many, many years. And then X-Men, when he quit, X-Men went through a rough phase, but then Jim Lee came along and made his mark. on the X-Men. You know, same with George Perez on Teen Titans. You know, when you mention Teen Titans, what's the one artist who defined that series? George Perez. And when you mention Daredevil, who defined that series? Frank Miller. Now, granted, Daredevil had a lot of artists. Gene Colan, Gil Kane, Barry Smith. They all had their hand in drawing Daredevil. But it took Frank Miller style to really cement Daredevil in the minds of comic book readers. So all I'm saying is that if you're a creator, create your own style. I honestly, I'm never considered myself a love artist to that level, but I get by. People seem to like what I'm doing, or enough people. Will I ever break into the mainstream? Who's to say? But that's my style. This is the way I draw. Take it or leave it. But that's not to say I don't learn from other artists. Oh, I do. I like to try to keep up with, artists who I like or who are visually interesting to me. Sometimes I'll go through comic books that I've never seen before drawn by artists I never heard of before, and it says, "Oh, I like the way he draw his eyes. I like the way he draw his hands. I like the way he laid out this page. I think I'll steal that. I think I'll borrow that. I think I'll take little elements from here and there, and incorporate in my own book. So my work is constantly evolving. In my work that I've done many, many years ago, it's not the same kind of work I do now. And Ben, aren't you going to be consistent? I says, well, I think in order for me to improve, I have to evolve. I have to change it up a little bit. I also want to keep up with modern tastes. One of the things I think is a problem with a lot of creators is stagnation. They don't want to evolve or change. Now, who am I to say if that's what a particular artist is wanting to do? Maybe they're quite comfortable with the way they draw. That's fine. No problem. I'm not judging them for that, But for me in particular, I'd like to see my work evolve and change. I like to experiment with different looks, different feels, because it's fun for me. I enjoy doing it. So people will say, well, aren't you not being consistent? Well, perhaps, but I don't care. That's just me personally. But like I said, as far as the Marvel and DC superhero comics are concerned, I think, and this is just my opinion, take it for what it is, take it at face value, take it for what it is that I think if they had find artists who could define a particular look of a title and people resonate with it, I think you'll start to see sales go up. I think if people like it and you give it some sort of consistent basis and look and feel, and it's pleasant for people to want to read, then I think things will improve. Because right now, I don't think people are reading comics. I think they're just buying them for the covers. I think half the comics, maybe more than half of the comics being sold right now are being sold to be slabbed, or speculated on. I watch a lot of these comic book channels, and what do they talk about mostly? Well, most of them is, how can you flip this comic? This comic's coming valuable. Oh, this is a hot comic. And then 3 months later, crickets. Nobody cares about that comic anymore. It's to me, it's all about the long game. If you really want, your creation to resonate, then, create a style for your comic. Make it stand out. Make it different from all the rest. If you're going to do a superhero comic, make your superhero comic look and feel that different enough that people identify it as yours. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's John Smith's, Pumpkin Man. That's uh, the Aloysius Humperdinck's, you know, strangers in bloody paradise on the planet, Venus, whatever. It just if you really want to make a mark, make make it with style. You know, I talked to an artist one time. He was a older veteran artist. He says, in truth, it doesn't matter what you create. You want people to remember your name. See, that is the most important thing. It's one thing to create something really fun and exciting and popular and different, but what you really want people to remember is who you are. When people mention your name, they say, "Oh yeah, isn't it the guy who did that, such and such?" Yeah, I really like his style. I really like the way he drew, women. I really like the way he drew dinosaurs. I really like the way he drew spaceships. I really like the way he drew this, that, and the other. Because people's memories is what is important. If you create something that people will remember, then you can continue to make a living off of it. So, anyway, just my little thought for the day. And I am relocating back to San Antonio, so I may not be posting every day. I'll try, but this is just one of those things I'm going to give you a heads up so that if you don't see me every day, you'll know the reason why. Because I still got to do my comics. I got to go in the process of selling the house. I got to go in the process of moving. So I'm going to be a pretty busy guy in the next couple of months. But I do appreciate your listening in, taking in what I have to say, indulging me in my thought processes, and hopefully I will have imparted some of my life experiences and wisdom upon you in hopes that it entertain you. So if you like what you've heard, subscribe, press like, doesn't cost you a thing, helps with the algorithm. Spread the word, let people know that there's a Asian comic book creator who likes to ramble on, and if nothing else, maybe it'll be a distraction for 15 to 20 minutes. So until next time, this has been done, signing off.